Hi, this is Bo. Anyone else on?
Hey there, this is Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Carly and I will be in the background answering any WebEx technical questions. If you experience technical difficulties within the WebEx session, you may also contact WebEx technical support at 1-866-779-3239. Please note that as an attendee, you are part of a larger audience. However, due to privacy rights, we have chosen not to display the number or list of attendees to all on the call. All attendees will remain in listen-only mode throughout the presentation today. And as a reminder, today's call is being recorded. We will be holding a Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. You may ask an online question anytime throughout by simply clicking on the Q&A panel located in the lower right of your screen. Please just type your question into the text field and hit send, and make sure to keep the drop-down option as the default, all panelists. I'll now go ahead and turn things over to Alex. Alex, you now have the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Society of American Military Engineers, I'd like to welcome you to our webinar today, How to Effectively Take Advantage of Your Socio-Economic Status. It's Not What You Think. I'm Alex Masters, Vice President of Advanced Integrated Solutions, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. I serve as the Vice Chair of Education and Training for the SAME Small Business Council, who is sponsoring this webinar today. The mission of the Small Business Council is to promote the role and relevance of small business in SAME through outreach, training, opportunity, and recognition. The Small Business Council is committed to keeping SAME members informed with the most up-to-date information from the world of small business. We inform SAME of technical programs of interest to small business members, provide opportunities to meet with key military decision makers, represent small business interests on select SAME national committees, keep members informed on small business regulations and legislation, and provide opportunities to highlight small business success in stories and lessons learned. If you're interested in getting more information about the Small Business Council activities, please join our email distribution list and follow us on LinkedIn, where we post details and provide a venue for members to dialogue with each other. I do want to take a moment and thank everyone for joining us today. I'm looking forward to the presentation and our Q&A session that immediately follows. I do encourage each of you to send in your questions as they arise, although we may answer the following, most of the questions following the conclusion of the presentation. You can type questions into the WebEx Q&A chat box on the right-hand side and submit to all panelists. We will answer as many as we can and as much as time will allow during the live webinar. And then following the webinar, the presentation will be emailed to the attendees within several business days to a link to the webinar as it is recorded today. Watch for a follow-up email that will also contain the PDH certificate and, again, a link out to the webinar on YouTube. And if you do have any questions or if you'd like to provide some feedback following the webinar today, do make sure that you complete the survey page that will pop up at the conclusion of today's presentation. I'd like to now introduce Bo DeBoer, staff archaeologist at Cultural Resource Analyst, who is part of the SAME Small Business Council's education and training team, and he will be doing the introduction to our speaker today, Mr. Frank. Over to you, Bo.
Thank you very much, Alex. Author, trainer, and business coach with 25 years in the federal market, Joshua Frank has worked with thousands of small and mid-tier firms. Josh works with companies to implement strategies that are tailored specifically to who they are and what they sell in order to differentiate, position for, and win government contracts. His training sessions, highly educational and thought-provoking, are consistently rated the top sessions at national conferences and events. Managing partner at RSM Federal, Josh is author of the Government Sales Manual and runs the Federal Access Program. RSM Federal's clients and members have won billions in government contracts using the types of business strategies he's providing today. Josh has been awarded SBA Veteran Business of the Year and received SAME's Industry Small Business Advocate of the Year. Josh serves on the board of directors for the St. Louis Veterans Business Resource Center, is a guest lecturer for SBA programs, including the Emerging Leaders Program, and as a member of SAME has supported our education and training the last 5 years. And with that, I'll pass it on to Josh to begin his presentation.
Thanks, Bo. I'd like to welcome everybody here today. And before I move into the primary subject, I want to start with, I want to go off on a tangent. And for those that know me, I go off on tangents quite a bit. You know, there are 16,000 companies that have GSA schedules, okay? And you know, the schedules, I'm using it because it's a microcosm of the overall government market. And if you look in 2013, all these companies that have GSA schedules, it was 22,000 at the time, 54% had less than 50,000 in sales, and 37 had 0. I mean, you're talking 8,000 to 12,000 companies probably not doing what they hoped that they would do. Jump forward, jump forward to last year, and look at the numbers. You know, if you happen to have a GSA schedule and you're doing fine, that's great. But a lot of companies have had their schedules taken away by GSA. They've been terminated, canceled. But last year alone, 50%. Again, 50, 8,000 had less than 50, and again, a large number, 30-odd%, had 0 in sales. And so, you know, first and foremost, especially for all the attendees today on the webinar and those that will watch it on demand, so much for that low-hanging fruit theory, right? If you're thinking about getting a schedule, there's some serious research that needs to go into it. But it's rarely publicized that half of companies really don't do well with their schedule. Again, it's a microcosm. But the important part here, and this ties into what we'll be talking about today, is it's not because of what they sell, right? They have strong products. They have strong services. It's not because of what they sell. So why are so many companies failing? Why do 50% in this example actually fail to successfully sell to the government? So one more example, and this runs true almost every day across the country. Pick 2 different companies that are pretty much identical. They have the exact same products and services. You know, both companies, right? The owners both have either no degree, have masters, have doctorates, whatever. They all get help from mentors and coaches and even paid consultants. They attend the same conferences, webinars. They go on Amazon. They buy all the same books. They join the same associations, same certifications, and all the same training. But one company wins $3.5 million in the first year, and the other doesn't make a penny. So explain that. Exact same training, may even be the same, you know, small business counselors, consultants, whatever, all the same books. Everything is identical, but one makes a lot of money and the other does not. Why does that happen? The answer is because it's not what you learn. It's how you apply it, right? And I'll talk more about this as we go through, especially as how it applies to your statuses. But it includes everything, especially teaming with other companies, your sales strategy, your proposal strategy, and absolutely your socioeconomic status and the strategies that you use to communicate who you are and what you do. Okay, and so Bo's already gone through most of this. You know, I'm with RSM Federal. We are a small and mid-tier advisory firm where we specifically tailor strategies, etc. 25 years. I'm a former intelligence officer. I'm former Army. Huge small business advocate, right? I mean, I'm a real big supporter of SAME, and I specialize in technique and strategies in order to accelerate into the market. So what we're going to cover today is fairly basic to intermediate techniques and strategies. It says 1.5 hours. I'm guessing we'll be short of that a little bit, but we'll definitely have time for Q&A. At the end of the session, I'm going to give you a link. There's no catch here. It's a copy of the manual that I wrote. It's 450 pages and 1,000 data points, techniques, and strategies of how to position for government sales. And you can pick that up when we're done with the webinar today. Today we're going to cover what our objectives are. We're going to talk a little bit briefly about why do companies win contracts. The most common, what do you do? Because a lot of companies just don't respond correctly to that question. And I'll give you my 2 cents on a process that works very well. We'll talk about how you market your status, whether you're just a small business with no other status, or you're 8A or woman-owned or veteran service disabled hub, you know, tribal, whatever it may be. We'll talk about how do you market that in a way that it truly differentiates you and communicates maturity. We will go through a 45-second intro that you guys can, ladies and gentlemen, can use either face-to-face at conferences, or even when you're in a initial meeting with a prospect or an initial meeting with a teaming partner. And then we'll go through a very quick summary, and then we'll go into some Q&A. So today's objectives. First, softly communicating your status. Most companies, I've either trained or worked with thousands of companies during my career, and most are hitting everybody over the head with their status. And we'll talk about that and why it's not a good idea. So how do you softly communicate? We're going to talk about the importance of communicating your value. And I'll say right now, and you'll see it again, communicating the value of your products and services is 100 times more important than me knowing that you are 8A or woman-owned or veteran-owned or small business. Okay, now, and I'm gonna. That's a horse that I am going to beat to death during this webinar. We'll talk about how do you communicate your status, marketing, digital print, and then a step-by-step process that I've already discussed. So I think some of you may already be getting the idea that I'm going to go against the grain. And for those of you, I believe everybody here is a member of SAME. If you've seen me present at the Small Business Conference or other webinars, you know I have a very unique approach to business in terms of it is more important that you focus on the realities than simply what you hear. And so most companies have, well, especially the smaller companies, start with, you know, the government nonprofits, the PTACs, the alphabet soups, right? I mean, I'm the chair of one of the VBOCs for the Midwest. Almost every company has paid for a mentor or a consultant or an advisor or whatever, you know, rabbi, whatever term you want to use. And everybody's been initially to a small business office or you've spoken to, you know, government employees. And for the most part, you're told the same thing, right? It's got to be front and center, right? First thing, you got to let people know what your status is. And the reality is we repeat and we repeat and teach what we're taught. And so why is it so common out in the market that folks are saying to you, hey, you need to go get certified, and, you know, because they're set aside federally mandated regulations that, you know, 5% 8A and woman and 3%, you know, service disabled and hub, and, you know, it's coming from more of a federal mandate perspective, the strategies being built on that, versus basic business and how you're being perceived. And we're going to talk about that again in detail. At the end of the session, and this is a very long ramp up, but I want to make sure everybody's minds are in the right area. My personal objective is to convince all of you that communicating your status is based on one single primary business strategy, and it is not based on federal percentages. Okay? So let's go ahead and start digging in. Excuse me. Will this sound familiar? Probably. There's probably a good number of attendees on the webinar today and those that will watch it on demand that you're going to go, yep, that's me. Yep, that's me. Business cards, right? If you have a status, you know, if you're just small, odds are you don't have that on your, you know, there's no logo that says you're small business. But if you're 8A, you probably have the big SBA logo and SDVSB or VSB. You've got the big CVE certification logo, woman-owned, same thing. You know, but is it just as large? Is it on the front of your business card? And is that logo the same size as your corporate logo? I asked the question, and it's obviously rhetorical, but there are so many companies. You know, and I get hundreds of business cards when I go to conferences from companies I meet, and the majority of them, their certification logo is just as large as their corporate logo, right? And what are you telling me? You're telling me that the value of your company is your certification and not the products and services that you provide. Think about that for a minute, okay? And the reality is that your certification should go on the back of your card. Your website. Think of your website for a minute. You know, is the first thing that you see, is the first thing that your eye catches, is it your socioeconomic status? Is it your certifications, right? Is it right there at the top of the page? Capability statement, look, if you have your statuses on the top of your website, you probably have them at the top of your CAPE statement, or line card, whatever you want to call it. And is that the first thing you see? And so for website and capability statements or line cards, and I think I'll get into this here in a little bit, but the first thing that I see should not be your status. Absolutely should not be your status. It should be the value that you provide, either commercial market, federal market, or both. And then the introduction, right? We've been talking about, you know, from a graphical perspective and online perspective, but in terms of when you're talking to people and you're at a conference and I walk up and I go, hey, what do you do? And you know, a lot of companies, because they've been trained this way where they've seen everybody else do it, this is what they say. And they go, well, you know, hi, Josh, we're a woman-owned small business that provides these services. We do, you know, we're a woman-owned small business that provides engineering services, woman-owned small business, or we're an 8A, SDVSB, you know, that provides, you know, we're general contractors, we you know, primarily do concrete, whatever it may be. And this is very common. And why? Because everybody that you've ever spoken to and everybody you watch does this, right? Small business offices, you know, make sure it's front and center. And my point to you is this, it makes no business sense, right? I'm going to talk about, we're going to discuss why it minimizes the value of your company. We're going to talk about how to communicate your status so that you're actually differentiating and winning government contracts. So this is going to be one of my tangents. You all have, everybody here has access to the Q&A. And I want everybody to pull that up real quick. And I just want to ask the question, and I'll watch these as they come in. Why do companies win contracts? Whatever's the first thing that pops into mind, go ahead and type that in to the Q&A area so that we can see it. So I'll give everybody about 10, 15 seconds here. Go ahead and type something in there and let me see what we got. Why do companies win contracts? We got some good ones coming in. I've got experience, match the solicitation requirements, relationship with teaming partners, yes. Past performance, yes. All right, we've got quite a few coming in. So, you know, some of these have already popped up, right? I saw past performance, you know, the relationships, right? And the reality is, this is why companies win contracts. Number one, hands down, you know, and some of you are laughing because you're like, yep, Josh is stuck on value. Everything else takes second place. Everything else takes second place. And so coming back to, hey, Mike, it's nice to meet you, right? Now this, you could be in front of a contracting officer. You can be in front of somebody on the program side. You could be in front of a teaming partner. You could be in front of somebody just at a conference, right? Maybe it's JETSI or it's SBC. And for our new, for the folks that are on the webinar today, if you are a new SAME member and you're not familiar with these conferences, and I'm not saying this because I'm a member of SAME or because I really believe in the mission. The SAME conferences are the best ran conferences of any organization in the United States. I've said it before. I don't get anything for saying it. But anyway, make sure you, if you're not familiar with those conferences, take a look. But anyway, you're talking to somebody and they look at you and they go, hey, Mike, you know, it's nice to meet you. What do you do? And don't tell me what you sell. Don't tell me what services you provide. Don't tell me you're small. Don't give me any of your statuses. Okay? And there's a lot of folks that are, you know, well, all right, Josh, that's great. What am I supposed to say? Now, if I don't tell you what I'm selling, right? And I'm gonna give you exactly, I'm gonna walk through an example of how you should communicate this. And because it's not what you sell, all right? And it's not your status, it's the value. Now, I'm beating a dead horse here, but I have seen more companies accelerate their sales because they flip this upside down from what they've been taught. So on the value, we will get back to status, but I want to talk this product versus service. When you're developing your market strategies, right, whether you're focused on, you know, when you're doing your propensity research, your market research, and whether you're using FPDS, USA Spending, you know, or other, you know, online tools, all free, you know, to figure out who buys what you sell, how much do they buy, how often do they buy it. Don't develop your sales strategy specifically against regulations or set aside. You know, for example, a lot of companies, well, we're going to focus on 8A, we're 8A, we're SDVOSB, we're going to really focus on those set asides. Yes, you should be looking for those, and everybody that's told you that is right, but what they are not telling you is that if you're approaching everything with, hey, we're an 8A woman-owned small business, we're an SDVOSB, we provide these products or these services, you are sounding like the 1,000 other companies in your market, in your industry. Now, if you have a niche, and there's a lot of companies out there that, you know, say, well, we've got a niche, you know, for our service, you know, we've got a process nobody else has. We have a product that, you know, provides, you know, whatever it is from an environmental perspective, perhaps, that nobody else has. And I would say to you, if any other product or service in the market has the same end result, it can't do what your service or product can do, but the result is the same, then you do not have a niche. Okay, at least from a business perspective. And so without proven value, your status provides you no advantage. Whether you're small, 8A woman, SDVUSB hub, what have you. If you are not communicating the value of what your services provide, your status means almost nothing. The other way I want you to look at this and think about it is, let's say the acquisition has been defined. It is going to be an 8A set-aside. It is going to be an SDVUSB set-aside. At that point, your status means nothing. It balances you. It enables you to compete. But now what is going to make you competitive? And so you get into proposal phase. And there's, let's say, the average federal acquisition has 5 proposals or 5 bids. In general, the average is 5. You're going to be up against 4 other companies. It's no longer about you being SDVUSB. And it's not about the services that you provide. It's about how well you can communicate the value that your services have provided to other clients. And so, again, I go off on some tangents. If you're looking at this and going, oh, I need to do this. It makes it, from a business perspective, it makes sense. I would say focus on the value and stop focusing on your status. Because all these folks, all these counselors, small business specialists, consultants, your colleagues and your peers that are operating this way, that you're molding yourself after them, it is not doing you justice. Okay, let me drill this in even further. So this is what happens when you focus on value. And this is a real world example. We got a call, this is probably about 2 years ago, general contractor in Kansas, and they were one of our federal access members, and she said, Josh, I've got a meeting with the senior contracting officer at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and I spent a month and a half building a relationship with the small business office. Small business office directed me to this one gentleman, and then this gentleman introduced me to this contracting officer who happens to be the senior contracting officer for the Corps of Engineers at Leavenworth. And so we walked through it, and she's 8A and she's woman-owned, and we talked about it. And I said, well, look, first and foremost, and this actually is a secondary tangent, but this is really important. She wanted to sell something. I said, don't try to sell anything. I said, you have 3 primary objectives when you meet a prospect in the federal space for the first time, whether it's a contracting officer or it's someone on the program side. Those 3 are, first, collect information and intelligence so that you are more competitive when opportunities do become released and you have information that other companies don't have. Focus on collecting information and intelligence. Number 2, build rapport, build a relationship. And then number 3, be that subject matter expert. Show them that you are good at what you do. And that is how most companies are positioning to get contracts, because they're positioning in pre-acquisition. Okay? So, and by the way, it takes a ton of stress off of you when you're walking into a meeting and you walk in and you don't have to worry about making a sale. You're not, you're there to sell yourself, and you're there to brand yourself, brand your company, and brand the services you provide, but you're not there to sell. You're there to collect intel, build that relationship, build rapport, and show them that you're an expert. And so I walked through that with her, and then I said, and you've got to control the meeting. And that's using a 45-second intro, and I'm going to show you that at the tail end of this webinar. And so she sat down with the senior contracting officer. They were talking for a while. In about 20, 30 minutes into the discussion, he looked at her and he said, well, you know, hey, this is really good. I like what we've been doing. You are a small business, correct? And she said yes. And he said, do you have any other status? Do you have any other status, certifications? And she said, yeah, we're 8A and we're, woman-owned. And he leaned forward, right, because she didn't open with it. She didn't walk in and go, hi, we're an 8A, woman-owned small business. She simply walked through, we're in the business of providing our clients with the following, values, et cetera. And so he puts his arms on his desk and he leans forward and he goes, we'll use the name Mary. Mary, why didn't you tell me you were 8A and woman-owned? I mean, we have federally mandated percentages. We're like everybody else, and the Corps does set aside. Why did you wait all the way halfway through our discussion to tell me those statuses? That makes a difference. And her answer was, that's not who we are. That's not the value that we provide. And he leaned back and he smiled at her and he chuckled and he said, Mary, I think that's probably one of the best responses I have ever heard. At the end of that meeting, he walked her to 2 other contracting officers that worked under his leadership, and in 90 days, she had 2 contracts. 90 days, 2 contracts. This is a perfect example of showing you from a basic business perspective, you're not going to win contracts because of your status. You're going to win because of how you position your value and how you communicate who you are and what you do. So that is a perfect example of softly communicating your status. And for those of you that are still on the fence and going, Josh, I don't know. I mean, look, I've been doing this for 5 years, 10 years, 1 year. I've had 50 people say, you put it on the top of your case statement, front and center on your website, and when you meet people, you got to say it right off the bat. Make sure they know. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that, because at some point it's going to come out, right? I mean, can you think of any discussion you've had with a contracting officer, program manager, or a teaming partner where you did not at some point mention what your status was? And the answer is no. Of course you mention it. What I'm recommending to you is differentiate yourself from all these other small companies. Show some maturity. Show that you are more focused on what you provide and the value that you provide to your clients, and you will win more contracts. And I'm not guessing, I know. I've seen it time and again, okay? So use this with your government prospects, your teaming partners. Again, I've already talked, it's a perceived level of maturity. It's extensive differentiation. It may not seem like it, but it really is. Now, let me go off on another tangent. If I ask for a show of hands, I'm guessing most of the attendees today would raise their hands. How many of you are unable to get the government, either CO or KO or a PM to return a call or even a teaming partner? And the answer is yeah, it's a constant frustration, but it's not unique, right? I think the majority of the companies on our webinar today are small, but this is not unique to large either. Okay, it's not unique to your industry or even the federal market. The reason why you won't get those callbacks and the reason why they won't respond to your emails, and they know that you're woman or 8A or service disabled or hub or small, and the reason why you're not getting on the teams that you want to get on is because you're not focusing on value. Which means, if I look at your website, and you're a service company, and you've got 3 primary service lines, or 3 primary business units and doing the following services, but I don't see anything on your site about the value that those services actually provide, then you're like 1,000 other companies that do what you do. That's the importance of value. I almost could have called this, this webinar a different title, right? It's as much about communicating your value as it is softly communicating your status. So let's get into some specifics. Business card, back of the card. Now, if you already have your business cards printed, you know, like I just ordered 1,500 business cards. I'm not ordering new cards for some time. But if you happen to have as many as I do, and your logo is on the front, it's just as large as your corporate logo, deal with it unless you really want to change it. But it should be on the back of your card. And again, if you put that logo on the front, you got to make sure it's smaller. Right? Now it makes sense what I mentioned earlier, right? If your logo is as large as your corporate logo, you're telling me your value is your status. And you now know that is absolutely not the case. It does not differentiate you, and it actually will inhibit you from winning contracts. Your website, it should go on your government landing page. Now, some companies, it's 50-50. When I tell companies, I don't necessarily recommend you have your statuses on your homepage. You know, and 50% of the companies go, Josh, I'm going to hedge my bets, and I'm going to, I am actually going to leave it on the homepage, even though I agree with you. But just too many other people have said otherwise, and that's fine. If you look at RSM Federal's website, my website, the only place that you will see SDVUSB and our certification from the VA is on our government landing page, right? Because I'm not just, my company, we don't just train other companies, we're also government contractors. And so our logo is deep in the site, but when you go to the government page, you'll see it. Capability statement is the exact same thing. I would even argue, unlike the website, do not put your statuses at the top next to your corporate logo. Put it down below wherever you have your NAICS code, your company information, your cage number, etc. And again, make sure it is small. Small, smaller than any other logos on the page. And I'm going to show you some examples. Here's an example. The website on the left, I have blocked everything out in terms of the name and everything because I don't want to hurt this company. But look at it. We provide value. That's horrible. But the fact that they're trying to provide their value statement there, it's below their status. And look at the size of that status. I mean, on the web, on the actual page, it's like 2 inches by 2 inches. I don't want to buy from you because you're SDVUSB. I want to buy from you because you're really good at what you do. Right? You got great capabilities and proven past performance. On the right side, it happens to be my site, look at the past performance at the bottom. You see the size of those logos? And then look at the top. SDVUSB is much smaller. That's done on purpose. It's done on purpose. Capability statements, right? Look, there's a gazillion CAPE statements out there. You can find examples, and I'll throw this out. Everybody's going to have my email at the end of this. If you want examples, if you want the templates for these, just email me afterwards. I'll send it to you. But look on the left. They don't even use a logo. They just say small and SDVUSB. Right? On the right side, it's way down at the bottom. Again, you don't see it at the top because that's not the value you provide. You don't win contracts because of your status. Your email signature block. First of all, don't do logos. A lot of companies use logos, but there's a lot of email systems that strip logos out. And so if you or members of your team are using logos or graphics, remove them because oftentimes it gets stripped out. I would also recommend don't list all your awards. You know, trade show booth, it's really expensive and you can't easily change it, but you can still softly communicate the statuses you have. Just put them in a secondary location on your trade show booth, okay? And so from an email perspective, this is, and I should get a couple of chuckles on this one. Lots of small businesses operate with email signature blocks that look like this. Okay? This screams small business. This screams a company that thinks that they're going to win contracts because of their awards and their statuses. Now, you know, yeah, you know, in awards, look, myself, my company, we've won awards for what we've done helping others. But for most people, it's like they look at my awards and they go, oh, you got an award. It's like for, you know, being nice to your cat. That's all it is. Because most awards, unfortunately, are overinflated. And everybody's got some, okay? And so, one, you got to get rid of the graphics. And two, get rid of the awards because most companies just don't care. I know you do, and you should be proud of any awards you've received. But at the end of the day, is it or is it not going to help you win a contract or generate revenue? And the answer is it's not really going to. And so your signature block should be as simple as this. And notice that the statuses are typed out. There's no logos. And that's all you got to do. And, you know, and I think a lot of you are probably doing a bob and chicken, right? You're going, yeah, Josh, that makes sense. But if you just look at these side by side, and I asked you, which company is perceptually more mature? The majority of you are going to say on the right. So let me bounce back to value. If you're unable to communicate your value, right, don't tell me what services you provide. Tell me the value that your services provide. Again, I'm going to give you an example here momentarily. If you're unable to communicate your value, this is what your capability statement looks like. Okay? I get a lot of chuckles at conferences and a lot of light bulbs go off. You know, because most companies, their CAPE statements are, hey, we're a really great company. You know, you have a 3% quota. It's federally mandated. You should buy from us. That's what most companies' CAPE statements come across as, especially for small. You don't want that. Your value is a benefit. It is quantifiable, qualifiable. It is metrics. It is a number. It is a percentage. You know, for example, we're in the business of helping companies. You know, we're in the business of providing, you know, cutting edge building, design, build services for, you know, federal organizations or for the Department of Defense. And on average, you know, our clients, they are on time and on budget 99.9% of the time, and our services decrease. What we provide decreases the challenges between the governments and the other contractors on site by 25%, mitigating issues. You start communicating value by thinking about numbers, metrics, percentages. It is not your past performance, unless you've got metrics and value with it. It's not simply your client list. You know, oh look, you know, we've done work with, you know, the Corps of Engineers and the Park Service and the Smithsonian. You know, that alone is not enough, especially for your teaming partners. You know, it's definitely not what you sell, products and services. It's not your features, maybe sometimes, and normally not the companies you team with. And so I'm going to bring this full circle, come towards the end here. And most of you are going, all right, Josh, I understand the status piece. I need to be more soft in it because that will differentiate me in the market. I will be perceived more mature. but you keep talking about value. How do you do it? And so most companies, especially most small, they walk into a meeting with a contracting officer or a program manager or even a teaming partner, and your butt hits the chair, and the person you're talking to, we'll call him Mike, and Mike says, so Josh, tell me about who you are, what you do, and normally, companies go, well, we're a woman-owned small business that provides environmental services, and we have these 4 different lines, and we have some products to go with it. And Mike interrupts me, and Mike says, okay, and what about this, and what about that? And I answer, and I'm feeling good. I'm feeling really good because he's asking me a bunch of questions, and I'm getting to explain, what we do and all these services that he can buy from me, right? And about 30, 40 minutes into the discussion, Mike looks at his watch and he goes, Josh, I'm sorry, I had a meeting pop up last minute. I've got to run. Follow up with me, send me your CAPE statements, and we'll go from there, okay? And normally I'm really excited. I'm like, absolutely, Mike. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time to see me, and I will definitely follow up. And I step outside, and I think to myself, oh, that was a really good meeting. I'm going to send my CAPE statement, and I'm going to follow up. But what am I going to do? What's my follow-up? I have no information or intelligence. I did all the talking. So doing all the talking is not necessarily good. And remember, I wasn't there to communicate all the great things that we do. I was there to communicate or to collect intelligence, build rapport, and convince them that I'm an expert or my company is an expert at what we do. And I have none of that. I have none of that. This is one of those discussions where light bulbs just start going off for a lot of folks. And I'm going to walk through the example here. Now, I'm going to read this to you verbatim. I want you to hear tone of voice. You can't see my body language, but I want you to hear tone of voice. And I want to preface this by saying this company is small, they're woman-owned, and they're veteran-owned. Okay? This is not. This is probably not your industry, but bear with me as I walk through it. So Mike says, Josh, so tell me about who you are, what you do. And I go, well, Mike, as you sort of already know, we're in the business of streamlining and consolidating info and data, across, multiple geographically dispersed networks. It's to increase visibility and accuracy and speed of access across the enterprise. And Mike, on average, our clients save about 30% in their operational expenses and more than 45% in data integrity and DB cleansing costs. And we've done this for Monsanto, we've done it for Blue Cross, and we've done it for the Corps of Engineers. Now, like most companies in our space, our website, our marketing collateral, it lists a half a dozen products or services. But Mike, the reality is we really have 2 core competencies that provide the most value, and those are product or service, A and B. But before I go into any more detail, can I ask you several questions to better help me understand your organization? Would that be okay? Now, this 45-second intro, I presented this to all the PTAC counselors at one of the ABTAC national events last year. And this was, I don't know how many PTACs are using it now, but this is becoming very well used in the market. It's had quite the reception. And it is carefully designed. Number 1 is your value, okay? Your value. Notice, it's multiple networks and visibility and accuracy and speed of access, right? That's power. It's the value of what you do. And then you got these percentages, these metrics. Now, you guys can hear me, I can't hear you, but if I asked you and said, okay, what industry is this company in? Most of you would go, well, that's obviously technology. It's information technology. It's IT. Did I say that we are an IT company that provides network engineering or database administration or software development? Right? Because those are the services that we provide. No, I didn't. This is simple, yet it's complex, because it makes you think differently about how you position what you sell. And so number one is value. I don't say I'm an IT company, and I don't say that we do database. That will all come out eventually. Number two, that contracting officer may not really know me from Adam. That teaming partner may not really know me. That person I meet in the exhibit hall at SAME Small Business Conference has never met me before, knows nothing. So I want to prove immediately that I am not new to the market. Now, that's your proof. That's proof that you know what you're doing. Now, for all the attendees that are on today and those that watch this on demand, what if you don't have any federal past performance? Then use your commercial. Use your commercial past performance. There's nothing wrong with that. Number three, you are making yourself equal to your competition, and then you're differentiating, right? What do a lot of companies do? Oh, we're really good at that. Oh, that is our sweet spot. Those are exactly the services we provide. We have incredible past performance write-ups, great testimonials, right? And we're 8A and woman-owned and SDVUSB, and you know, so you can set aside for us. That's everybody out there. Everybody does that. And so to differentiate yourself, do something very simple. Hey, Mike, look, you can go out there and look at, our website's just like all the other companies that do what we do out there, okay? The same list of 6 or 8 services or products that we provide. But the reality is we're really good at 2 of them, and these are the 2. Now, this will get a chuckle, but I hope it makes sense to you. Whoever I'm talking to, those 2 products or services change. I change what my competencies are, my 2 core competencies, depending on what I know they're looking for. Think about that for a minute, right? I mean, before I go to meet with somebody, I advise or coach a company to go talk with someone, find out what kind of acquisitions are they currently releasing. Call the small business office. Hey, what's the current focus? Go look at the vision plan, Vision 2020 or Strategy 2020. All agencies have them. What direction are they going? And I try to figure out those 2 or 3. And those are the ones I say we specialize in. And if you were saying that to me, I would sit back, I wouldn't say it, but I would think to myself, wow, finally a small business that doesn't think they do everything. Because that's how a lot of companies come across. And then number 4, hey, before I go into any more detail, can I ask some questions? Would that be okay? I want to take control of the discussion. And if you're not comfortable taking control of that discussion, you've got to practice and become proficient at it, because you don't want the person you're meeting with to control the meeting. All right, so I'm going to ask it. It's rhetorical. I'll give you 2 seconds to answer. What is the number 1 purpose of a prospect meeting? Collecting information and intelligence. If you don't take control and you don't ask the questions, you can't collect that information. So those 4 pieces, value, proof, make yourself equal to, and then differentiate, and take control. The hardest part is your value. For all of you on the webinar today that are working on, gee, how do we communicate this? Let me give you a quick insight. Go back through all the contracts that you've had. Doesn't have to be last 3 years. This is not an RFP. Go back 10 years, whatever, and think back. Okay, we provided these services, but what did those services actually do for that organization? Okay? Now, that was a prospect, but what if you're meeting with a teaming partner? Okay, I know I'm going off on some serious tangents here, but this is all good stuff. If it's a teaming partner, you got to add a section in. We've spoken with the government program manager over at HHS or the Corps, and believe that based on those discussions, we can help the team be more competitive. Why is that important? That you have spoken to the government. Because the majority of companies don't actually talk to the government. They just see an opportunity. They immediately call the 2 or 3 large primes that they know and go with their hand out, their palm up, begging, can we be on the team? So instead of differentiating with your status, which a whole bunch of companies out there have, make a quick call to the government, ask a question or two, and then be able to say to the prime, we've spoken to the government. And what is the very first question that the government or the teaming partner will ask you? The first question is, well, what did you hear? And what is the number one mistake that companies, especially small companies, make? They tell them. And the answer is, and this is another strategy, right? I'm all about technique and strategy. When a prime says to you, well, what did they say? You can say, well, I'll give you a high level, but just like your company, Mike, our corporate policy is we don't share market intelligence unless we are under a teaming agreement, under a TA. And that's your response. It's corporate, it's our company policy. We don't share business intel unless we're under a TA. I mean, I'm probably no different than your company. So let's get a TA signed. Let's go after it together. You want to talk about a great way of getting onto teams. Just make sure you call the government first, ask a couple of questions, and then you call the primes. Now, bring it full circle. What happened to socioeconomic status? Did you hear me say once that I was small, woman, or veteran-owned? Okay? Think about that. I'll quickly bring you back. Look through the list here. I never tell you what my status is. And it's pretty darn strong without the status. And why is it strong? Because most small companies don't do this. And those that do win contracts. And so the government's going to buy from you. And your partners will team with you, small or large, because you got proven products and services. You're communicating solid value. You have information. For partners, you call the government, and you have information on that opportunity that is beyond FedBizOps. That's beyond eBuy. That's beyond DIDS. That's beyond, all the other systems and bid matching solutions. It's not because you're small or a woman or a veteran or any other status that you've got. It simply balances you. Without that value, small business status, you're not going to, small business, it doesn't win contracts. Your intro only takes 45 seconds. It will come out. Eventually, it will come out. Okay? So, I'm going to summarize this entire webinar in 5 seconds. You're not a status. You are a company that provides value. Now, before we go into Q&A, first and foremost, I want to thank everyone for being on the webinar today, and yes, thank all of those that come and watch it on demand. My contact information is here if you have any questions. For a copy of the Government Salesman, again, there's no catch here. If you want a copy, the URL is there at the bottom of the page. And as a general FYI, because the Federal Access Program is operated under a micro website separate from our corporate. That's why there's 2 different domains. But you can grab the manual there after the session. And on that note, I'm going to turn it over to our professionals, Bo and Alex, and we can kick into Q&A.
Thank you, Josh. We appreciate that. Let's see here. Let's go to the Q&A. And if you do have any questions in the interim as well, make sure that you start typing those in. So real quickly, Josh, I do have one that I had. So we often run into contracting officers that tell us, oh boy, it would have been great if you guys were 8A. We don't really have any projects for you at this time and whatnot. What type of advice or recommendations do you make for those that might not qualify for that type of status but might hold some of these other cards in their pockets?
That's a really good question. Let me take it from this angle. Every company out there should have what's called I call it a programmatic teaming strategy, but it's a teaming strategy. And so, let's say, for example, you are we'll call it a woman-owned small business. You should have, in order to cover the acquisitions in the market, you should have a strategy where at the beginning of the year you go, okay, I need to have 2 companies that are 8A, that I've built relationships with, 2 that are STV-USB, maybe 1 that's HubZone. I want another 1 or 2 companies that are also woman-owned, that do what I do. For all of our attendees on the webinar, from a business perspective, you need to think about, I want you to think of it this way. Your competition is some of your best partners. Some of your companies that make a lot of money, oftentimes they will work with the competition in order to really differentiate and have competitive advantage. So even if you're a woman-owned small business, you still want to have a couple of teammates or partners, teaming partners that are woman-owned. And then you want to have 3 to 5, 6, pick your poison, on the large side. And so when a contracting officer says, oh, Josh, I know you're woman-owned, but due to acquisition strategy, ease of use, maybe they'll sole source, who knows, those become more rare over time. We do something with you. I really like what you do, Josh, but you're not 8A. My response is, that's not a problem. I've got let's say we both have GSA schedules. Hey, I've got a contractor teaming agreement arrangement with this other company. We're both on schedule. They're 8A. Another response is, that's not an issue. If you like what we got, absolute mirror services, products with another company. Let me introduce you. You just got to think a little bit out of the box. So anyway, that's, in terms of if you don't have the status, then, and you can't convince them. I mean, first and foremost, you want to try to convince them, well, it's not, I understand you want to do 8A, but if you do it as STV-USB, or if you do it as woman-owned, look, here's the value we provide. I mean, and in fact, I'll tell you right now, we'll cut 2 points off our rates. Whatever you see in GSA schedule, I'll cut 2 points off, 3 points, 4 points off. You just got to talk to the government and find out where you can stretch them. And if you can't, then you've got to have a stable of companies that you've built relationships with that you can bring in. And the value of that is when you bring that 8A in, that 8A, and assuming you win the contract, that 8A is going to look at you and go, wow, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So anyway, there's one answer for you.
Excellent. Thank you, Josh. I think we've got another one here.
Okay. Josh, this is Bo. I had a question. What are the ramifications of an agency not hitting their socio-economic goals? For example, Department of Energy.
Yeah, that you're going to get me in trouble. I answer this question, and for our attendees, this was not staged. When I mention this, and there are directors of small business programs from various agencies in the audience, they get very mad at me. First, I will say this. If an agency is not hitting its federally mandated percentages, there is only one reason, and that is because it is not a priority of the agency. There is no other reason. Either the director of the agency is going to make it a priority and tell the contractors, hey, it is, it is August. We are nowhere close to hitting our percentages. So start releasing these, small and woman and 8A, et cetera. That could easily be done, and they choose not to. And so first and foremost, not all, if an agency is not hitting it, it is because the agency chose not to. There are very minor exceptions. Some of those exceptions would be, Department of Energy, right? The example you brought up. And in the case of energy, they actually have much smaller set-aside percentages than the rest of the agencies. But there's nothing that says they can't be releasing stuff, janitorial and other pieces, maybe some, smaller environmental cleanup spills, whatever it may be. Now, this is important. Everybody knows that the Small Business Administration releases their annual reports. I wish I'd known this question would be asked. I've got a chart that shows all this. And for example, last year in 2017, the Department of Defense did not hit their small business requirements, right? I think instead of the 23%, they hit 22 point something. And so I caution business owners and capture managers and sales professionals, just because somebody doesn't hit their number doesn't mean you shouldn't target them. Because that 22 point whatever percent the DOD hit for just small business, I don't remember the number and don't hold me to it, but it's something like $65 billion. There's plenty of money there. And so if let's say, and here will be my final point on this, especially for the attendees, let's say it is September 1st, right? We're in the final push of the government fiscal year, and you've got two proposals that you can do. And one's with one agency, one is with the other. And you only have the time and the resources to do one of them. I would pick the one that has a status where they hit their percentages every single year. Okay? There's a little bit more to it, but at a high level, I would say, Bo, focus less on whether they're hitting their numbers, because if all you're focused on is hitting their numbers, you're not focused on the value you provide, you're focused on your status, which we know does not differentiate or allow you to truly communicate competitive advantage. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Josh.
You bet. What other questions we got?
Again, we can just type those questions into the Cisco WebEx box here on the bottom right. You might have to click it up at the top as well, that Q&A icon, but see here.
I think we're good for today.
Sounds good. If we do have any additional questions at any given time, please do feel free to send me an email at amasters@myaIsteam.com. I can route that over to Josh. Alternatively, make sure to jot down Josh's email right here and also make note of his phone number and be sure to reach out to him as well. But we do thank you, Josh, for your time today. I thank Bo as well for participating and helping coordinate this webinar. And just also want to express some appreciation to the Society of American Military Engineers and the Small Business Council for being able to host this webinar today. I appreciate everyone's attendance. Again, if you have questions, please feel free to follow up with Josh or myself at any given time, and we'll look forward to your future participation here.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the webinar. You may now disconnect your lines.